We have the honor of having Dr. Raynald Samoa in the Bay Area. So we're not in the studio, but we're nearby. We're nearby. We just wanted to welcome Raynald to the FICA podcast, and thank you everybody who's tuning in. If you can share the podcast so that we can share a lot of information. Usually we start with a check-in, and then we can go in with everything else.
Yeah.
All right. So, want to tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you people that don't know who you are and what you're doing. Tell us a little about your education and where you're from and your growing up and all that.
Let's see. I grew up in. I was born and raised in Hawaii. And
I'm gonna have you hold the mic. Go ahead.
Sure.
No, go ahead.
I did a lot of my schooling in Seattle, Washington. So I went there for undergrad and med school. And then came to Los Angeles to do my residency at USC County Hospital. And then I did a endocrine fellowship. So I am a diabetes and hormone specialist. And then I did a pediatric endocrine fellowship. And then I am now working at a cancer hospital in Los Angeles, or near Los Angeles, called City of Hope.
Oh, nice.
So that's me in a nutshell.
Married, children, family.
Oh, yeah. So I have a husband, and we have 2 kids. And we live near Pasadena, in Southern California. And so I'm just now starting to be more active in the community down there. Being a transplant from the Northwest, took a little time to get to know people. But because of the nature of the work I do, the community will find you and pull you towards them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And so so now I'm visiting the Bay Area for a family event. And so that's my check-in. That's my check-in.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you. And we were just talking about everything that's going on in the Bay Area. And then we happened to have you check in. And I was telling you that Neil, that you and Neil met at a Utopia, Oregon. Is it a retreat?
Yes.
Retreat.
Yes.
And he came back and he's like, oh my God, I met the best guy. He was so nice, so, smart and funny. And I was like, oh yeah, who is it? And I think I told you this last night, and he's like, Raynald Samoa, he's a doctor. I don't know if you know him. And I started laughing because those you don't know, Raynald's related to my husband, Mo. And so I was like, oh yeah, it's so awesome to see the work that you're doing. And he tells me that you're might be opening Utopia,
Los Angeles.
Angeles.
We are trying to set the roots up, and so one of the challenges of Los Angeles is it's a widespread place.
Right, it's huge.
So without traffic, you're about 15 to 20 minutes away from each other, but in reality, you're like an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
And so it makes it a little tough and challenging to get people together. But if the cause is worth it, you're gonna find a way.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at right now. And so there's younger people that are so itching to sort of promote different causes within the Pacific community. And we get so caught up in our everyday,
I know.
You work full time, we're raising kids, and life gets in the way of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've realized that if you don't pepper meaning into it intentionally, then it becomes a rat race.
Right.
It runs you down, and so giving back to the community is a way to rejuvenate. And this kind of stems out of the research I do. And so I think that's how I came to that conclusion. And so, do I need another volunteer activity?
Right.
No, it's like,
yes.
Because as we'll talk later, through the podcast, there's a ton of stuff because there's so much need in our community.
So much need.
And so one of the things I love about the FICA podcast is that, you know, you guys bring to light all these efforts. You know, like I love getting up in the morning and playing the podcast from the weekend before, and seeing all these wonderful efforts going on to make lives better.
Right.
Yeah, I was telling you last night about Epi and Nani, that beautiful segment you guys did, and you know, it's part reaffirming things that I know, and then part educational.
Right.
You know, and so I learned so much just by listening in.
Yeah, I always say that we need to talk about taboo topics in the PI community because we don't talk about it. You know, we're like, hush, we don't want to embarrass we have the pressure on us to be quiet so that we don't embarrass our family, but then it also affects our mental health.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
And, you know, that mental health, we like to think that it's it's a one-off from our actual health. Like, oh, we can put our mental health in the back burner. But what a lot of researchers are realizing is that mental health has so much input into the way our body works. You know, we have so much say in whether our body helps promote cancer versus fight cancer.
Right.
You know, and so it isn't until you look at the science of it that tells us, you know, like how stressed we are, how poorly we manage our stress, how that manifests into not eating well and not exercising.
Right.
All of that creates this environment that is just fertile ground for these diseases to grow.
So tell me what you're doing with the cancer, or how are you studying cancer? Are you treating? So one of the conversations we were talking about is because your mom was diagnosed with breast cancer a few years back?
Yes.
And then she decided, go ahead and tell that she decided to stop treatment, and then... Right,
so I'm a diabetes specialist, and so a lot of people often ask me, why are you interested in cancer if you're a diabetes specialist? So I work in the between phases of that. So it's our metabolism is basically how well our body uses the energy source that it has, you know, and how well we function. And when that metabolism is off, that makes it easier for us to get diabetes, to get cancer, to get heart disease. So when I was working at this cancer hospital, I was there for about 7 years, and I just kept seeing cancer patient after cancer patient come in being diagnosed with diabetes, you know, and I started to take a good hard look as to why did these happen together, you know, and I also do this address called the State of Pacific Islander Health. You know, there's this gathering called the Gathering for Pacific Islander Health that's led by Nia Aitoto, and so at this summit, I always I report what the common causes of death are in the different Pacific communities. And so it just, you know, just like every place you go, it just kept coming up. Diabetes, cancers, heart disease, diabetes, cancer.
Are they going hand in hand, or wow? And
they're getting worse together, you know. And so, you know, this includes the Micronesian states, you know, the Marshallese, FSM, Palau, American Samoa, Guam, the continent, you know, and there's some places where infectious diseases is still a high rate of disease, but it's still the other ones are still there, and so I started to look a little bit harder as to why these happen together, and that's where I came across this dysfunction in our metabolism, you know, and you know, the fancy way to say it is insulin resistance, and it just basically means that our metabolism is not good, right? And so as I was researching this, you know, I started to ask myself, well, then is it just does this just happen and we
Right.
have no choice, and you know, all we can do is just treat it after it occurs? And everything I was reading and coming across was that that's not true. Like, we have a lot of say in that environment that our bodies are. Now, that's not to say that you can't be predestined. You know,
Right.
like you can have diseases like breast cancer, for example. You can have the mutation that increases your risk outside of what you do. But, you know, a lot of times the course of that cancer is influenced by how we live, you know,
And what we eat.
and
do
what
you
we
think?
eat, and whether we are active and how well we have stress. And, you know, you and I we're going to a falafel right now,
Right.
you know, and that's very poignant because Uncle Mose and I know that we literally had, what'd you say, like five funerals in 6 weeks,
Yeah.
you know. And so you also see it when you look at our communities versus other communities. Like, my husband and I go to weddings a lot, and oftentimes, sometimes we'll go to like an Asian wedding, and you know, a lot of times the couple will go and they'll be greeted by the elders, you know, and they'll be like 80, 90. And then you go to a Samoan church and you look at a Samoan church and you look for their elderly population, you might have 70,
Yeah.
you know,
It's like
but
60.
it starts to drop off
Yeah.
like really fast. And so that goes to show sort of the work we need to do to help improve that environment. Yeah. So long story short, my mom got diagnosed and she was supposed to have 8 cycles of chemotherapy. And after the second cycle, she said she couldn't handle the side effects.
Yeah.
So, and most of the chemotherapy was precautionary, like to keep the cancer from coming back. So I hit the books and I did this extensive literature search and looked up anything I could find in regards to breast cancer recurrence and lifestyle modification. And the weird thing I found is that eating healthier, exercising, and keeping your weight down is better than chemotherapy at keeping the cancer away.
Oh, wow.
Right. Did you know?
That's
I didn't.
crazy.
I had to
Yeah.
I had to search hard
Wow.
and find out that that was true. And
But I think I believe that because, you know, back in the day before there was chemotherapy, indigenous, you know, when we were back in the islands, or our ancestors, like, I'm sure there was illness, but I don't think as crazy as it is now, because I feel like every other person I hear cancer is not a rare disease anymore.
oh, right. Yeah, it's very sad. Like there's these groups that do surveillance on cancer, and there's cancer data that's reported at certain intervals. And the scary thing for Samoans is sometimes their rates are a little bit higher than the population, but what we do see is that when Samoans are diagnosed, they're diagnosed at more advanced stages, and that they have a higher risk of dying of the cancer than most groups. And sometimes it's significantly higher, like in the case of breast and colon cancer. And so, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with sort of the state we're in, you know. So when my mom said, you know, we couldn't do it, the chemo anymore, you know, I sat our family down and I said, okay, we need a plan. And so I drew out the way insulin works in the body. Like, I had those flip charts. And I drew it out for my family, and then I showed them like what contributes to this insulin resistance or this environment that makes the cancer grow. And the roots of those are what we eat, if we exercise or how we exercise, if we get enough sleep or enough quality sleep, and if we can manage our stress well. And if our roots aren't healthy, then the tree we grow is diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. So to me, a lot of effort should go into making our roots healthier so that we grow better trees. You know? Because, you know, a lot of times we were taught that diabetes is somebody's fault, right? That you made bad decisions. And what I've come to realize is, um, so I'll use the analogy of the garden. Yeah. So if one flower dies in a garden, it could be a bad seed. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you keep getting flowers that are
They're
dying over and over again, then something's wrong with the garden. Yeah.
Oh.
And so that's how that's kind of what's, because I think you and Mohsen know more than most people, Neil especially.
Yeah.
I'm not the first person to go say hi to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, I'm slightly reserved. This has pulled me out of my shell.
Yeah.
You know, like I put up with the uncomfort and the sort of vulnerability
Right.
of meeting people and talking to people, because this subject is so important.
It's
Right?
so important. I
Yeah.
think people that want to help or to that's I get so this is uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting used to it. But it's because I want to share information that people that could possibly save your life mentally, physically, or whatever.
Yeah.
So just getting the information out there is huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Huge.
Because I'm a Samoan kid at heart, you know, and so I know my place.
Right.
But who scolded the older people yesterday at breakfast?
You.
You know, and so it's one of those things that you, in the grand scheme of things, like what's important, you know, and so my mom, you know, was a great success story. So she is going on her second year of remission.
That's awesome.
And so, and she used to be pre-diabetic. Now her blood sugars have normalized. And then, you know, some of the satellite things that have happened is my dad was diagnosed with diabetes, and he's kind of on the border.
Yeah.
You know, he still takes like metformin, but his doctor says it's optional.
Yeah.
You know, and my sister, who struggles with health, she lost about 50 pounds. And so,
that's so awesome.
yeah, and so it's hard. I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to change these lifelong things that are rooted in us.
Yeah.
But it's easier to do it together.
Yeah.
You know, and look at Mose. Yeah, I was like telling him, I'm so proud of it.
He stopped with the rice.
Yeah.
Because that's huge, right?
Yeah.
That's huge for PIs because we eat rice with everything. And then we were talking about how we're not full until we eat the rice, and you really don't need rice to get full.
No, like, so Tongans are a great example. Tongan and Samoans are so similar.
Sweet potato or?
Yeah, they eat sweet potato. But if you go to a Tongan family thing, you don't see a lot of rice. You know, it's not that common. And so, you know, this excuse that you can't get full, I don't know. I don't know how much I believe that.
How did that happen? So we have Lunga who's sending her love. So good morning, Lunga in Samoa.
It would be my family flooding the
Yes,
podcast.
that's Lunga in Samoa.
Hi, Lunga.
But one of the things that, well, we're not saying for everybody that this is the way to stop your chemo. We're just saying for your mom, that's what works. And a lot of research. And her son is a doctor, so you're watching her, her vitals and everything. So we're not saying it's for everybody.
It's done under supervision.
Yeah.
You know? And there's a difference between prophylactic chemotherapy and active treatment chemotherapy. That's not to say that you should not question your doctor when you have questions or concerns. You have to be an advocate in your own care.
Yeah.
But you also have to understand the limitations of Western medicine.
Right.
You know, and so these types of talks help us get that message out there, because sometimes that gets lost in the mix.
That's one of the things that when I was diagnosed is I had to be my own advocate.
Yeah.
I had to do my own research. Usually I go into the doctor's office and nod my head. I have no idea what they're saying to me. Right. Prescribe the pills, I'll take them and everything. And so my cousin, who is a genetic specialist, she, thank God, she went with me to all my appointments. And she would ask the questions that she's like, you have to ask the questions, do the research, question why they're giving you this medicine. You have to be your own. So I've learned that And
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy this late in my life.
Oh
'cause
no,
I,
my
you
dad
know.
my dad hates it. He hates it when I ask his doctor questions.
Oh, that's
Like,
good though.
yeah, he's like, he sits there and gets all uncomfortable and he's like, why do you do that? I was like, one, your doctor's a resident,
Right.
so you
You
know
have to
we
ask.
have more training.
Right.
And two, I'm not being disrespectful when I'm just voicing concerns about your
Right.
care. You know,
Yeah.
like they can either respond, and because we're a team,
Yeah.
you're not somebody they're just throwing stuff at. You're
Right.
somebody that has to be part of your own care. So,
Right.
yeah, I
That's
get it.
awesome.
I get it.
Yeah. So she,
Yeah.
and she looks amazing. I was saying that yesterday. That your parents look awesome, and then you're like, oh, they're on a. They eat differently,
Yeah.
but better.
Yeah.
They're exercising.
Oh.
And
Yeah, they're walking, and
yeah.
I try to get them to walk my dogs more. They're about 30% right now.
How are the dogs? How are your babies?
They're
no,
good.
Are they your babies or are they
Yes.
Nick's babies?
They're kind of, well, they're both of ours. There's 3 of them, so yes, and we have 2 kids, so it gets a little crazy at our house.
Yeah. So what do you think of the measles epidemic? I know we had a long discussion about it, and I wish we didn't, so we can talk about it. But I just want to go over everything that we spoke about.
Yeah.
The measles epidemic that's happening in Samoa, where kids weren't getting vaccinated,
Right.
and that there's people that are against vaccinating kids, right? Were we talking about that? Go ahead and touch on that.
So this is a prime example of how ignorance kills.
Right.
You know, and so I'm not saying that anyone who is voicing their opinions against vaccines has, you know, malicious intent, but you also have to be able to take some responsibility about giving advice to people. So I think the better use of my time is just to sort of go over the facts. The fact is that there is no cure for measles. You know, what we do when a patient comes in with measles is we support them. You know, we give them IV fluids. We sometimes have to intubate them and have a mechanical ventilator breathe for them, and wait for their own immune system to fight the measles. You know, so it is so much easier to prevent it, you know, and vaccinations prevent measles. And so unfortunately, there's a lot of things that have gone on in Samoa that have really reduced those rates of vaccinations. And that's why we're seeing the high rates of infection. I think, you know, you always want to make sure you double check someone's facts when they're telling it to you. And so I would double check with the government web pages, although I think they're down. But the last I checked was about 4,000 people with measles.
Yeah.
And so the death rate from that is to be expected with that many people infected.
Oh, wow.
And so, and because measles is the highest risk for people who have compromised immunity, so these are people who are like undergoing cancer treatments, people with advanced HIV/AIDS, children who haven't been able to mount an immune response. All of these people are highly susceptible, and the elderly are highly susceptible to dying from measles. And so the effort that's going on right now from a lot of different people, which I'm so touched to see, is focused on just vaccinating. And so groups will go in and they're vaccinating, and contrary to some opinion, the government is not forcing people to get vaccinated.
Yeah,
there.
it's of your own free will.
It's of your own free will. They just identify you if you choose not to, so that the groups don't waste their time with trying to convince you to get one if you don't want one. You still put yourself at risk, though, and your loved ones at risk if you don't get vaccinated. There's some efforts going into taking care of these people and trying to inform them to go get checked out, you know, if they do have the measles. So that effort isn't as strong as the vaccination effort, you know, and so because it requires a longer stay, more resources, and so these efforts by concerned groups to send money is going to those efforts.
Yeah.
You know, and so um, those count. You know, in Samoa, where there's a lot of limited medical resources, every cent counts for them. You know? And so
Because we live in the United States, it's not well, it is kind of. I just assume every country
yeah,
you have to vaccinate your child because
yeah.
you can't go to school, you can't do a lot of things. And if you sign, I know that if you don't have your child vaccinated, that here in the States, that you pretty much sometimes they won't let you go to school. So I just
Right.
assume that every country is like that. And to hear that so many
Yeah.
kids are dying from the measles, is Samoa not? Are they one of those countries that you're not? Or why do you think a lot of kids or families did not vaccinate their children?
So you know, it was the perfect storm of things that there were instances where there were adverse. I think there were some deaths attributed to not giving it correctly,
Right.
and so that increased the concerns. That coupled with the huge anti-vaxxer social media presence
Right.
that started to come about, just really reduced their rates. And there's not.
And you think a lot of misinformation?
A lot of misinformation,
Yeah.
you know, and so, you know, these are people trusting laptop physicians,
Yeah, right.
who, you know, the Google physician,
Yeah.
and completely ignoring the recommendations of a physician.
Right.
You know? And you know, there's not a lot of systems in place in Samoa to catch. Whereas in American Samoa, you know, they can put some type of restriction on something like going to school or what have you, to increase their rates. And so because of that, you know, the rates are low. You know, and so a lot of people have compared this to the Spanish flu epidemic in
1918.
And so similar things happened in regards to access. You know, there wasn't, you know, back then it was just the lack of resources, whereas now it's partly that, but it's also got this huge anti-vaxxer sentiment going on. You know, and so it's a tough thing to get over, but I think, you know, a huge part of what we have to realize is how to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
And so these vaccination efforts should reduce it, you know, because say what you will, I think these campaigns, unfortunately, they move the needle on public awareness, and I hate that this is the way we have to become aware, but I hope it does lead to action. You know?
And can you get vaccinated if a child or an adult, if they already have the measles? Can you still give them the shot, or does that will it help them?
You know, I would defer that to like an infectious disease specialist, because there's differing stages of it, and I don't know the effectiveness of the vaccination taking at that point. Because
so it's good that they're trying to vaccinate everyone before they get the disease.
Right, because the once you get it, your immune system's already reacting, and so you're already developing antibodies. But there are certain instances with infectious diseases where they do give the vaccine when you have the active infection, and it helps with the course. I just don't know if measles is one of those.
Yeah.
But so you and I were talking last night about how measles is just one of the things vaccination prevents.
Right.
You know, there's polio, there's mumps, there's diphtheria, there's all these other bordetella pertussis, which is whooping cough. There's all these other conditions that if they come back, they can really
well, we were talking about polio, that if it comes back, there is no cure, right?
Well, none of these conditions have cures very much. I mean, except for some of the bacterial diseases that there's some vaccinations for. A lot of these don't.
Right.
You know, and so if they come back, um, it's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
And so I hope that there's some thought about preventing those conditions as well.
So the measles vaccination is just for the measles.
Right.
There's a polio vaccination. There's a whooping cough.
Yes.
So every disease that we spoke of has its own vaccination. So
right.
You're just getting measles, but
yeah. So I think measles, mumps, and rubella they're all in one vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the MMR. So those conditions get immunized all together because the shots all together.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there's a ton. There's hepatitis B. And Asia has long had a problem with hepatitis, and that's
and
not
why
in.
Is that? Is because they don't get vaccinated for it, or
they're getting better, and the rates are stabilizing or going down in a lot of the areas. And so these widespread immunization programs and campaigns are not. They're not like they don't happen everywhere.
Right.
And so a country has to say that this is something worth like investing in.
Mm-hmm.
So in the U.S., investing in preventing those really severe types of hepatitis, which some of them have vaccinations for, some don't, are really important. And so there's a ton. There's a ton of things that get prevented because it's in the late 90s when I worked in the pediatric emergency room. A lot of the vaccines were introduced and that made a huge difference in how many kids were getting sick.
Yeah, and saving lives and.
Right.
So you have a summit, Pacifica Summit. You want to talk about in March?
Oh, so the Pacifica Summit is a combination of groups. So the official title is called the Pacifica Summit, the Gathering for Pacific Islander Health, Education, Art, Spirituality, and Civic Engagement.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
And so each individual institute that is made up in the summit is meant to address an aspect of Pacific life that needs to be brought to the forefront. And the reason why we've chosen to do it, there's many reasons why we chose it to do it all together. One is that we can help pool our resources. Two, it helps us collaborate and do things together, that cross the different fields.
Right.
And so in Seattle on March 12th and 13th, they're going to conduct a 2-day summit there, and so it's meant to engage us and be moved every couple of years. And so I think we're eyeing on Los Angeles for the second one, or the Bay Area, because we have such a strong presence here.
Yeah.
And so these aspects are really varied. The Eventbrite's going to go up, I think, in a couple of weeks or so.
Oh, cool.
And it'll show the agenda. So, like I said, there's tons of topics, and they're so varied. So, if something catches your fancy, I know one of the things that one part of the civic engagement is our media presence. And since podcasts are becoming such a strong part of where we are as a community, I know they're going to want to try to bring podcasters in, if not this summit, the next one.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and so, and I think this kind of goes with what we're learning. A big part of what I do, is this lifestyle modification. So I'm the physician lead for diabetes education at my cancer hospital. And I got it because they needed somebody to teach people how to eat healthier, exercise. And I got it mostly because nobody else wanted it. Because these are topics nobody really wants to talk about. And the reason why nobody wants to talk about it is because our science behind how we educate people is so poor, you know, right? So if you know, if you and Mo walked into the door and you came with a problem and I told you all these things to do, what the doctor expects is you're going to go home and you're going to do everything.
Yeah. Check it off and do it, and then
without fail, right? And no one does that.
And then they don't come back.
And they don't come back.
And then they don't come back.
It's just not a reality people live in. Mm-hmm. So luckily for me, you know, when I combed sort of the research, I found this model called behavioral economics, right? And so there's two ways our brain makes decisions, like a slow way and a fast way. And so the slow way is the part of you that makes good decisions. You know, it's the part of you that says, I'm not going to eat that cupcake. I don't need it. I'm not going to argue with my spouse right now. Neither of us can make a good decision right now. And then your fast brain is all about impulse. Yeah. Like what's easy, what's available, what's going to make me feel better right now, what's going to make me forget how I feel right now. And so our slow brain and our fast brain, they're constantly fighting to make the decisions you have to make. And high-functioning people like you and Carl and Neil, we're good at making about 85% of our decisions using our slow brain. Right. The problem is every time you use your slow brain, it gets tired. You know, so and there are things that make our slow brain even more tired. Like what is that? Not eating well, not exercising,
not enough sleep,
not managing our stress.
Yeah.
So those things make our slow brain exhausted. So one example I have is I had to go to a meeting about 6 months ago in Virginia, and the only thing, so my assistant does my travel arrangements, but one of the things, she was on maternity leave, so I had a temp. So the only thing I told the temp was, can we not keep me away from my family as much as possible? Right. So she had me leave work on a Thursday night at like 6:30 in the evening, and then I had to fight LA traffic to get to LAX. Got there at like 8:30. My flight's delayed, and I get to Virginia at 7 in the morning. The meeting starts at 8 in the morning. I just go straight through to about 2-3 p.m. Get in the car,
get back on the plane,
and to come back. And so it's been, up until then, it's been about 5 years since I had like French fries. Oh, wow. And I love French fries, right?
Me too.
But they're not good for me, so I don't partake in them much. I had French fries that night, right? And it's because my slow brain is exhausted. Yeah. You know, I'm stressed about the meeting, getting there. I'm not going to eat that well.
Makes sense, though.
Right? And I'm not going to sleep well. And so the old way, I would have just beat myself up for not having enough willpower. But the better thing I realized is to ask myself, how do I recharge my slow brain? I go home, I get a good night's sleep, and I go back at it the next day.
I think sleep is like, I think I have a problem with that much, because we're go. And you know, Carl travels a lot. Yeah. And one week we had a speaking engagement, I think it was a Friday morning, and he was in Chicago or something like that. And he flew he had to stop in Seattle, and his flight was delayed, and he stayed up all night to get to the speaking engagement Friday morning. And by the time he got there, he was so exhausted. But of course, we ate like crap because we were on the road. Yeah. So I think that makes a lot of sense now. I'm gonna choose to get enough sleep, choose to rest. That like a light bulb went off.
The nice thing is that I don't do that often. So it's not a common thing I do. Yeah. So oftentimes what I tell patients to do is there's stuff that happens every day that makes our odds bad, you know? And so it would help us to take a little bit of time to look at when you make a bad decision that you know is not good for you, look at what happened around it and go, okay, what can I change to make my odds better? Right. You know? And so like I had one patient, their blood sugars in the afternoon just kept going up, right? And everything else looked fine. So I was like, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah.
why do your numbers keep going up? And he goes, okay, so our staff meetings are in the late morning, and they're really stressful because the company's going through a hard time.
Mm.
So right after the staff meeting, we all go to lunch, and nobody's trying to be healthy.
I get that.
Right? And so that's something you can't really avoid. So I told him, okay, so what things can we do to help protect us when we know something like that's going to happen? One things he could do is bring his lunch, right?
Oh, that's true.
So if you make your decision when your slow brain is stronger, you can protect yourself a little bit from when your fast brain's going to take over.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other thing I told him, like, maybe make better friends, for lunch.
That's true.
That want to be healthier, because the fast brain responds to peer pressure really well.
Right.
And so that's why if you're on Facebook a lot, your slow brain gets eaten up with all the stories that are on there. That when you whip off that really sharp remark, that's your fast brain that just jumped in.
I know. I just wanted to shout out some of the people that Professor Palaita is on there.
Oh, I know Kavika.
Kavika, good morning. JD Allo, Matthew Leota, he was on our Utopia San Francisco Turkey Trot, which we're going to have you next year, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, Lunga's on. Hi, Lunga. Carl, Neo, good morning.
Good
Professor Ursula Siatonga, I don't know if you've ever met her.
I know of her.
Yes.
I think I listened to
huge
a podcast that she was on.
Right, and we have so Professor Siatonga is at San Francisco State, and she's awesome. She works a lot with Professor Palaita, and so I just wanted to shout them out. Thank you for tuning in and share our information so that
I'm a little bit offended that Neil and Carl aren't here. I
Well,
understand the circumstances, so I feel like to make it up to me, I should be the FICA medical correspondent.
Yes, you're the yours. It's your job. I love it. See what happened, Carl? Usually we shoot. Our studio is in South City, and so we have a family funeral, and so we were going to cancel. Well, we did cancel. And Carl lives in Sacramento, and Neil is in San Francisco, and I have you here in Vallejo, and I was like, I have Raynald here. We gotta go. And so we shot up to Sacramento to get some stuff, and then here we are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had to go get equipment that I don't normally have, and I haven't used for a long time. But I just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in right now. And if you can share this podcast, because there's a lot of good information on diabetes that Dr. Samoa is sharing with us.
Oh, yeah, I love these. I love the podcast because I learned so much. Shout out to FICA, shout out to Afrotene.
Oh my gosh, for the culture.
For the culture with Danny Boy.
Yeah.
I learned so much from listening to those podcasts.
Yeah.
Because, I'm a geek, so I'm in my place. I have my stuff my mountain of stuff that I have to go through. But when we do our research, we're finding out that a lot of stuff that researchers are telling us are helpful for us. For example, intermittent fasting, mindfulness. These are Pacific concepts that have been redesigned and tried to be reintroduced back to us.
Yeah.
If we realize that we have an indigenous concept and focus on that, because a lot of these chronic diseases is the result of the divorcing us from our roots
and our culture,
right.
and we're coming to a whole new world where we're learning.
And the farther we go away from the roots, the sicker we get. Yeah. And so, right? So a lot of the coming back to culture, the way you guys are promoting learning your language, learning your culture again. To me, these are fights for our health, and I'm humbled and appreciate the fact that you guys do that work.
Oh my gosh, no. We're just sharing information that people need to hear, and I know we started doing this because my kids are born and raised here, and they're trying to learn the language. And I think we talked last night that my kids learn the culture from you guys' side because I think me and one other cousin are the only, and there's 7 sisters, and all the kids are married with tons and tons of kids. And me and my other cousin Josie are the only ones married to Samoans. And so I've noticed that our kids are a little bit more rooted in the culture because we're married to Samoan men, you know, and you know, you guys are from Samoa to the bone. And so, but I appreciate it, and I love that. And I love that from Tama. He's going to be doing the service today, Fa'aleava. He did a language, Samoan language and culture class. And he broke down to me the fa'alavelave, where people sit, and I didn't even know what a sa'a was until he explained it to me. So when they were talking about the sa'a was coming, I was like, oh, who's the sa'a in your family? And then when, you know, my mom, when he came in, I was like, oh, that's the sa'a. You know, I know it's a little thing, but to me it was huge, and it clicked. And I just, you know, I love that you guys stay with the culture is deep in your family, and that my kids get exposure to it. So I love that.
Well, I used to think it was kind of like a mafia that you could not, couldn't buy out.
Right.
But now I realize that it's an integral to not just my health but my wellness.
Right.
You know, and so, because you know it's easy in Western culture to be driven by the dollar, and then fa'alava has become this enterprise, and you just don't understand it. But I do love the fact that we still engage. But there's also, so this is like Afro-Tainted Talks has this beautiful podcast about responsibility in fa'alava, and making sure that that's not abused. And I love the fact that people not only engage in our culture, but also like not improve it, but morph it to something that's meaningful. You know? Because that's, I used to think that culture was static, you know, that they were on like cement tablets, and nobody could change them. And you know, it's a good, because I'm a history buff too, and what I've realized is that culture is dynamic, you know, and it's meant to promote the promotion of not just people, but the perseverance of values that people say are important for us to live. You know, and so there's some examples in our culture of how I think they're instated to help us live physically, and then there's so many more that was supposed to preserve the soul of us. You know, and so, you know, like I love when they have conversations about the pea, you know, the malu and the songamiki, that, you know, it's changing, and the culture is changing around it, and they're symbols, you know, and the values in the symbol, not the symbol itself. I mean, what the symbol stands for, not the symbol itself. So, you know, I'm getting older, so it's easy for me to get cranky about stuff.
I'm with ya.
But then part of me also understands that to get it to stay, I have to either adapt or learn how this becomes, this changes our culture. And so, same thing with our health.
I think that's huge, that we need to exercise, but addressing the mental health and the issues of why people are the way they are. I think a lot of, like, I used to be really, well, I was never quiet, but
Thank goodness.
The way I handled a lot of relationships, it was because of, you know, stuff that happened to me that I held in. And I always stress people, you got to talk and let somebody listen to you, and you never know who is listening, and that may click to them that they need help, or this is why I do that, and this is why I don't do it. And I love that people get to see that there's a Pacific Islander doctor, you know what I mean? Because and nothing wrong with, we're stereotyped as athletes and actors, and oh my God, that's amazing that we are athletes and actors, but also that kids get to see that we're doctors, we're physicians, we're, you know, psychiatrists, and teachers and professors like Professor Palaita and Professor, you know, Siatanga, and just all kinds of entrepreneurs that I really love for kids to see us in different lights.
Yeah, because you know there's pioneers, you know, and Kavika's one of them. Like I think he's the first someone to graduate with a PhD degree in his field from the University of Washington.
Yes.
You know, and so it's important for us to open into those spaces because we're not going anywhere.
No.
You know? Like I was the first someone to go to the University of Washington medical school, and I never thought, didn't have, like I didn't think it was a thing. You know,
it's huge.
And then when I went to the classes, every case that they brought up that had to do with weight was always a someone.
Someone person. Oh.
And there had never been a someone in the class before. So all of a sudden the class was starting to get quiet. Yeah. And then everybody would like
look at you.
And you know, I was like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know how to respond. You know, I didn't want to wear the sash. I didn't feel like there was going to be a tiara.
Right.
But you have to represent. And so I went to one of my professors because every student at the school had to do a research project. And so they sent me to genetics. And you know what the geneticist said? He said, you should do obesity because some ones are fat.
Oh.
Right?
That's
and
nice.
that was my, you know, and then I realized, like years and years later, that this guy, to us, we were just this faceless mob. You know, we were just a group that, you know, to geneticists, a lot of it is just numbers. And so what I was bringing to the school was the embodiment of this, you know, this group that you've already said has a health disparity. Like and I'm not joking, like I literally, every case, like if it was a woman with breast cancer, diabetes, that was like overweight, obese, it was a someone. There's this condition where heavy kids can have a problem with their hips, right? Someone kid, right? There was gestational diabetes, someone, right? Elderly man who like died of a heart attack, was obese, someone.
Oh.
And so, you know, what it really brought to my attention was that the West knows that we have a health disparity. They know that we have these problems in our community. They don't do anything about it because no one is there to tell them how much it hurts. Right? So that's my job. You know.
We love that you're there doing the job that you do. We have a bunch of people on. I just wanted to say hi to Lavanya Binder, Ruth Asuenga Misa, Dita Ngauteote, and Tuafa Mamea, Fina Langkil, and I can't pronounce that name, so. But is there anything that you wanted to get out there? Or?
My eyes are, I'm not wearing my glasses.
Alicia Cook said thanks for all the info, so that's awesome.
Full disclosure, Alicia and I are cousins.
Oh,
so.
But still. Still. I just wanted to get out some information about the measles medical drive that they're having, and that there's pickup locations everywhere. And I just wanted to let you know, San Francisco has another drive going, and we're going until December 15th. And Neo Veda, again, is the contact, and he's at 525 Argonaut Avenue in San Francisco. Neo's phone number is 415-359-4683. Utah, you can go to Sangato Bakery and Cafe. They are at 44 West, 7200 South. Please call Lita at 801-706-9755. Again, Hawaii is Moana Siaki at 808-358-0220. Tons and tons of drop-offs. Modesto is Melissa, and her email is melissasuapaya, right, at gmail.com. So there's all kinds of drop-off locations. December 15th is the last day for this week. I think we're going all month. But Neo is in the Bay Area, and again, his phone number is 415-359-4683. Any medical supplies, so hand sanitizers, antibacterial soap, towels, medical face masks. Masks are important. Vitamin A, injectable and oral. Just all kinds of things. I posted the flyer on our website, on Facebook and Instagram, and so if you can help, that would be amazing to help the kids in Samoa and American Samoa. So,
is that Neil's number that we can text if we want suafa'i too?
yes, that is Neil. If you would like some suafa'i, Neo, it's 415-359-4683. He makes the best suafa'i.
Right?
And he makes it kind of like keto-ish. He's been playing with cake recipes.
Look at
and
that.
So, our Neil, love you, Neil. And so, did we hit everything? Measles intro.
Yep.
Okay, so
Looks like it.
do you have another conference besides? Are you March 12th and 13th?
Yes, in Seattle, Washington. I can't remember. The Eventbrite's going to go up soon, but if you just type in Pacifica Summit, PASIFIKA Summit, then you'll be able to find the link.
Awesome. So let me see if I got any stuff I gotta get out for people. Let's see. I think I'm done. Well, yeah, I'm good. I can do that.
You know, I never wanted to move to the Bay Area till you guys started like advertising all the programming that goes
I
on
didn't
here.
even know that there was so many programs until we started going to events. Like people, and it's so awesome to see that our community. I didn't even know. Like Pacific Islander Together, they have a Christmas gathering that they give away toys. Even in Fairfield, Pastor Ledoux, his church gives away. There's a big giveaway at Fairfield Community Center. PIYA, Pacific Islander Youth Alliance, they have a Christmas program where they give toys away to kids. So I will post the dates. All My Usos has a sock clothing drive that's happening December 13th. I posted that. I mean, there's so many events where so many people are trying to help each other. And so, you know.
So I totally forgot. We also run a diabetes prevention program in churches.
Oh,
and so
that's awesome.
It's a faith-based one, and the first year the results were pretty amazing. And so we presented the results at a nutrition summit, and Samoan church was like, we want to do it too. So the program is called Roots of Hope, but a group called Seeds of Hope is who facilitates it through the Episcopal Church of Los Angeles.
Awesome.
And so in January and February, late January, early February, the Samoan churches are going to join us. And so if you're interested in starting a program like that, we can help.
That's awesome.
And so
if they want to contact you, is there an email they should email?
Yes, I'll give it to you. You guys can post it on your website.
Okay, get a hold of us if you want that information. Verna Foster. Vina?
Oh, that's my sister.
Yeah, smartest person she knows. That I agree.
It's a very small group.
I agree. And Carl says you're hired at PBD staff as of
great.
30 seconds ago. We're so grateful for your time.
Oh,
thank you so much. Anytime we'll be contacting you so you can do some programs.
Sure.
Go live, do interviews. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Raynald Samoa, thank you. Come back to FICO with us next